can you imagine waking up on Thanksgiving morning, not to the smell of turkey, but to the gut-wrenching sound of shattering wood, and then finding your 7-year-old nephew, hammer in hand, staring down a scene of absolute destruction like he'd just won a war he'd been fighting his whole life? My blood ran cold, and I thought, what the hell just happened? I mean, 1 second, I thought a tree had come through the window or we were being robbed. My heart absolutely pounded as I practically flew down the hall in my socks, bracing myself for some disaster. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I saw in the middle of my grandfather's living room. It stopped me dead in my tracks. There, amidst a literal battlefield of shattered plastic and cracked screens, what used to be my cousin's brand new expensive gaming setup, stood Callum, my nephew, 7 years old, barely taller than the coffee table, a claw hammer still dangling from his small hand. And the most chilling part? He wasn't crying. Not a single tear. He was just breathing heavily, looking at the wreckage with this intense, almost satisfied expression. Like a man who'd just finished the toughest job of his life, a job he'd put off for far too long. That's when his cousins, Sloane's daughters, shrieked. "Our stuff!" they screamed, collapsing to their knees, frantically sifting through the devastation. You could practically feel their shock, their absolute rage. Right behind me, my sister Sloane, their mother, came barreling in, her eyes already fixed on Callum. She was moving, I kid you not, straight for the coat closet where my grandfather used to keep a switch. You know, for disciplining kids. Her gaze was locked on Callum, like he was the only problem in that chaotic room. Before I could even open my mouth, the older girl, she's 15, a full head taller than Callum, shoved him backwards. Hard. He went down into the broken pieces, and the younger one moved in right behind her. I crossed that room in 3 desperate steps. My adrenaline was pumping. I threw my body between them and him, one arm outstretched, pulling them back before it could escalate. This detail is crucial, okay? Remember this, I got between them. I did not let them touch him again. When Callum climbed back to his feet, he had a cut over his eyebrow, already beating blood, and a scrape down his forearm from the debris. He just wiped it away with the back of his wrist, and calmly, sat down on the couch. There was something on his face that looked almost like pride, like he was silently saying, "There, it's done. Where is the rest of it?" The older girl was screaming now, spinning in a frantic circle. "Where are our things?" And that's when the whole room went eerily quiet. It was like a collective realization hit everyone at once. The destroyed things on the floor? That wasn't the expensive stuff. Not their brand new phones, not the fancy laptop they'd been bragging about all week, not the smartwatch or the designer bag Sloane had just bought the older one for making honor roll. All of the truly costly coveted items were simply gone, not smashed, not hidden, just gone. "Callum," I said, my voice barely a whisper, as I got down on my knees in front of the couch, ignoring my sister, who was still hovering by that closet like a storm cloud. "Look at me. Tell me exactly what happened." He looked past me, his gaze sweeping over the family now filling the doorway. Aunts, cousins, Sloane's husband Grant, all of them staring at him with the same horrified expression. But he didn't flinch. Not an inch. "They're bullies," he said, pointing one small finger directly at the 2 girls. His voice was steady. "They have always been bullies, and everyone in this house knows it, and everyone in this house pretended they didn't." The older girl lunged again, but I caught her by the shoulders, setting her back down into a chair without a word. Grant started to say something, a sputtered protest about me laying hands on his daughter, but I just looked at him. I really looked at him until he shut up. "Last year," Callum went on, and his voice was so steady, so clear, in a way a 7-year-old's voice should never have to be. "They broke a boy in my class named Wells. He built a model rocket with his grandpa. It took his grandpa 6 months of Saturdays to help him do it. And they stomped it into the parking lot in front of everyone and laughed while he cried." Sloane opened her mouth, probably to defend them, but Callum kept right on going. He was clearly done being interrupted. For the rest of his life, it seemed. "This whole year," he continued, his words like small, precise punches. "They've wrecked everything I care about. They snapped my telescope in half. They poured paint thinner on my art set. They took my science project the night before the fair. And there was nothing I could turn in." He took a breath. "And I told people. I told all of you. And you know what everyone said? Everyone said I was being dramatic. Everyone said they were just kids playing." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I'd been overseas for work for most of the last 2 years, and Callum had never told me any of this on our video calls. He just smiled, shown me his drawings, asked when I was coming home. And this whole time he had been living inside this. Is this true? I said, and I didn't mean to raise my voice, but it came out loud enough that the pictures on the wall seemed to lean back. Nobody in that room would meet my eyes. Not one adult. My sister looked at the carpet. Grant looked at the ceiling. The ants found very interesting things to study on their shoes. That silence. That absolute deafening silence. It told me everything I had missed, everything I had ignored, and it made me sick to my stomach. Callum wiped the blood off his eyebrow again and looked right at me. So yeah, he said, I smashed their stuff. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. The younger girl gasped like he'd just confessed to murder. You broke our things, you little, she started. But Grant put a hand on her arm. But that's not why I did it, Callum cut in, and the whole room went still again. Because there is nothing that makes a room hold its breath quite like a 7-year-old telling you that you haven't even gotten to the real part yet. Then why? I asked him quietly. Sweetheart, if it wasn't about your telescope, and it wasn't about the rocket, then why did you do this today, on Thanksgiving, with everybody here? And Callum turned his head, slow and deliberate. He pointed across the living room to the recliner in the corner where my grandfather sat in his Thanksgiving sweater, staring at the parade on television with a soft, faraway smile. He wasn't registering a single thing that was happening 10 feet from him, lost somewhere inside his own dementia. They stole from Grandpa, Callum said. The room didn't react at first. It was too big a thing to land all at once. They stole $2,000 from Grandpa, he said, louder this time, and they've been doing it for weeks. And every single one of you would rather believe I broke a game console for no reason than believe your perfect girls are thieves. I watched the older girl's face, and for the first time all morning, something crossed it that wasn't rage. It was fear. The specific, chilling fear of a person who has just heard a locked door creak open. Her sister saw it too and grabbed her hand. Grant let out a short, humorless laugh. That's insane, he said. Grandpa doesn't even have $2,000, and if he did, the girls would never. Last Tuesday night, Callum said, standing up off the couch so he was talking to the whole room now, not just me. I couldn't sleep, my tooth hurt, and I heard someone moving around in Grandpa's room at 2 in the morning. Everyone went quiet. Even the parade on the TV seemed to get quieter. I got up and I looked, and I saw your daughters go into his room while he was asleep and take his bank card out of his wallet. They found his pen written in the little notebook he keeps by his bed, the one where he writes things down now so he doesn't forget them. My sister's face had gone the color of paper. I followed them, Callum said. They took Grandpa's car keys and they drove to the ATM at the gas station on Route 9 and they took money out. And I stood behind the ice machine and I watched them do it, and I was so scared. But I did the thing you taught me, Auntie. My heart clenched. I recorded it. The older girl went for him then, fast, both hands out for the phone. I stepped in and caught her around the waist, putting her back in the chair for a second time. You're lying, she was saying over and over, but her voice had climbed an octave. You're a liar. You've always been a liar. I have a video, Callum said, and he pulled his little scratched phone out of his pocket and held it up. His hand wasn't even shaking. He tapped the screen and turned it around, and there it was, grainy, dark, filmed from behind an ice machine by a terrified 6-year-old, but unmistakable. The two girls at the ATM in the middle of the night, one of them working the keypad, the other stuffing bills into the pocket of her hoodie, laughing. The screen glow lit up both of their faces clear as day. Grant made a sound like the air had been knocked out of him. He grabbed my grandfather's phone off the side table with shaking hands and started digging for the banking app, the one the family had set up so someone could keep an eye on Grandpa's accounts, the app that apparently nobody had actually been watching. He found it. I watched his face while he scrolled, and I watched every drop of blood drain out of it. $2,000, he whispered. Over 4 nights, 500 at a time. He looked up at his daughters like he had never seen them before in his life. Girls, why? He would have given you anything. Why would you take from your grandfather? And the older one, cornered, did the thing that told me she had no soul left to appeal to. She lifted her chin and she said, He doesn't even know what money is anymore. He was never going to miss it. What's the big deal? That was the moment the room turned. I felt it happen. Up until then, some of them had still been looking for a way to make this smaller than it was. a way to keep the peace and finish the turkey. But when a 15-year-old says out loud that she robbed a man with dementia because he wouldn't notice, there is no smaller version of that. There is just what it is. But you still don't understand what you took, Callum said, and there was something almost gentle in how he said it now, which was worse than the anger somehow. He walked across the room, past all the frozen adults, and went to the little roll-top desk in the corner where Grandpa keeps his papers. He pulled open the second drawer and took out a folded piece of paper that he had clearly put there himself for exactly this moment. He came back and he handed it to me, not to his Aunt Sloane, not to Grant, but to me, and he said, "Read it out loud. Read it so everybody has to hear it." I unfolded it. It was written in my grandfather's handwriting, the new handwriting. That shaky, careful print he uses now on his good days when he's fighting to hold on to himself. And I read it out loud, because Callum asked me to and because everyone in that room deserved to stand there and listen. "Dear Callum," I read, my voice catching slightly, "I am getting worse. Some mornings I do not remember if I ate breakfast. Some mornings I do not remember your grandmother is gone, and I look for her in the kitchen. But I remember the $2,000 I have been saving all year in the coffee can, because every Thanksgiving your grandmother and I fed 6 families in this town who had nothing. And I am not going to be the reason that stops, just because my mind is leaving me. The list of families is folded under the can. If I forget, and I will forget, you remind me. You are the only one who ever listens to me anymore. Love, Grandpa." My voice cracked on that last line, and I did not care. The room was dead silent. My sister had her hand pressed flat over her mouth. Grant had sat down hard on the arm of the couch like his legs had simply quit. And in the corner, my grandfather stirred at the sound of his own words. He looked over at us with those cloudy, searching eyes, and he said in the most confused and innocent voice you have ever heard, "Is it time for the food drive? I have to give the money to the families. I saved it. It is in the can." Nobody could answer him. Nobody could even look at him. My sister made a small, broken sound and turned her face into Grant's shoulder. "The can was empty," Callum said quietly. "I checked it Tuesday after I followed them home. 6 families, Auntie. There's a mom on that list with 3 kids and no husband. There's an old man 2 streets over who Grandpa says fought in the same war he did. Grandpa saved all year, a little every week, so they could have one good meal today, and they took it to buy a laptop and a purse." He looked at his cousins. "That's why I did it. Not because of my telescope. Because you stole Thanksgiving from 6 families who did nothing to you, and everybody in this house was going to let you keep it. I've interviewed people for a living. I sat across from grown adults and watched them try to talk their way out of things, and I have almost never seen anyone as completely, totally out of road as those 2 girls were in that moment. So this morning," Callum went on, because he was not finished. He was so far from finished. "At 3:30, I got up before anybody, and I took their laptop and their phones and the purse and the smartwatch, all their most expensive things, the things they love more than any person in this family. And I listed every single one of them online for free. First come, first served. I put the address and people started showing up before the sun came up. That's why your good stuff is gone. Strangers have it now. And I didn't keep a penny. And I didn't take a single thing for myself. Because that was never the point." He set the phone down on the coffee table, screen up, "The money I couldn't get back. It's spent. It's gone. I'm 7. I couldn't fix that part. But I could make sure that whatever they bought with Grandpa's food drive money did not stay in their hands for one more day. So I gave it to strangers the same way Grandpa wanted to give that dinner to strangers. And now nobody in this house profits off what they did. Not them. Not you." A 7-year-old had just explained the concept of restitution and moral hazard to a room full of adults who had spent a year telling him he was being dramatic. And honestly, if you're keeping score at home, he was running the table. The older girl started toward the coffee table, toward the phone. Slow at first and then not slow at all, and I saw exactly what she was going to do. "I already backed it up," Callum said, without even turning around, like he could feel her coming. "The video is in 3 places. My email, the cloud, and I sent it to Auntie last Tuesday the same night. You could throw that phone in the river and it would not matter." He added quietly, "My auntie taught me you never keep the only copy." That stopped her, but only for a second. And then something in her face came apart completely, and she bolted, not toward the phone, but toward the kitchen. I heard the drawer. I heard the specific, unmistakable rattle of a kitchen drawer being yanked all the way out. and I was already moving before she came back to the doorway with one of my grandfather's carving knives in her hand, and a look on her face that had gone all the way past reason. Now, here's where I need you to remember what I told you at the start. I got between them. When she came out of that kitchen, she was not aiming at nothing. She was moving toward the coffee table, and the phone, and the small boy standing next to it. I didn't even think about it. I put myself in the space between the knife and Callum, shoving him back behind me with one arm. She was 15 and furious, and she had a blade, and I'm telling you the truth, I would do it again 100 times out of 100. I caught her wrist as it came up. We went sideways into the bookshelf, and books came down around us. I kept both hands on that wrist, and I bent it away from every person in the room and toward the wall until her fingers had no choice. And the knife dropped. It hit the hardwood with a sound I will hear for the rest of my life. The blade had caught the back of my forearm on the way down, a long, shallow line that opened up red, and I didn't even feel it yet. I kicked the knife hard, and it spun across the floor and slid under the entertainment center where nobody was going to be reaching it without moving furniture. Grant finally moved, but he moved to grab his daughter and pull her back, not to help me. And even in that moment, I noticed it, that his first instinct was still to protect her from the consequence instead of protecting the child she had just come at with a knife. I put my back against the coffee table so Callum was behind me and Grandpa was to my side, and I looked at that whole room full of adults who had watched a teenager pull a knife on a 7-year-old, and it stood there frozen. And I said, low and clear, so there could be no misunderstanding, nobody touches that knife. Nobody goes near Callum. Nobody moves. Blood was running down my arm now, dripping off my fingers onto Grandpa's carpet, and I could feel it, but my hand still worked, and that was all I needed. The younger girl had started to cry, but it wasn't the crying of somebody who was sorry. It was the crying of somebody who had just understood that the game was over and there were no more moves. Her sister was breathing like an animal, hands opening and closing, looking around the room for anything. Another drawer, another weapon, another lie. Callum, I said, keeping my eyes on the older girl. Take Grandpa's hand and walk him upstairs to the bathroom and lock the door. And do not open it for anybody but me or a police officer. You understand? He didn't argue. He went to the recliner and he took my grandfather's spotted old hand in both of his small ones. And he said, "Come on, Grandpa. Let's go see if we can find your can." Which was the only thing in the world that would have gotten that man out of his chair. And Grandpa lit up and said, "Do you know where it is then?" And Callum said, "I think so. Come on." And he walked him toward the stairs, slow and careful, one step at a time. A 7-year-old leading a grown man up out of the fire. Sloane started toward the stairs after them, and I stepped into her path. "No," I said. "Not you." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "He is my father," she said. "That is my father up there." "That is your father," I agreed, "who you left in a house with 2 thieves who were bleeding his savings dry, and you never once checked the account you were supposed to be watching. And when your own son, by every measure that matters, this child who lost both his parents and got dropped into this family and treated like a burden, when he tried to tell you the truth, you called him dramatic. So no, you do not get to go up those stairs right now. Sit down." And to my sister's credit, or maybe just because there was nothing left in her, she sat. I heard the bathroom door close upstairs and the lock turned, and only then did I let myself breathe. I pulled my phone out with my good hand, the one that wasn't painting the carpet red, and I dialed the 3 numbers. Grant came off the couch when he saw what I was doing and reached for the phone. "Wait," he said. Wait, don't do that. We can handle this. We can handle this inside the family. We don't need to bring the police into a family thing. It will ruin their whole lives. Please." I turned my shoulder to block him the same way I had blocked his daughter. And when the operator picked up, I said, clear and slow, "I need police and an ambulance. A 15-year-old just came at a 7-year-old with a kitchen knife. There are injuries and there is elder financial abuse, theft from a man with dementia. Please hurry." Gran was still talking, still saying, "We can handle this. This is a family matter." As if a knife held on a first grader becomes a smaller thing when the person who pulled it shares your last name. I gave the operator the address. She told me units were on the way and to keep everyone separated, and I told her that was exactly what I was doing, and I did not hang up. I set the phone on the coffee table on speaker so there would be a recording of every word said in that room from this moment forward. That, it turned out, was a good instinct, because with the police actually coming, with it actually real now, my sister finally broke and the truth started coming out of the walls. It was them, she said, staring at nothing. All of it. Every time something went missing this year, $20 out of my purse, my mother's Cameo pin, the gift cards, they told me it was Callum. They said they caught him. They said he had problems because of his parents, that he was acting out, that he couldn't help it. And I believed them because it was easier to believe that the sad orphan was stealing than to believe my own daughters were. I felt something go very cold and very still in the center of my chest. You blamed Callum, I said, for a year, for things they did. She couldn't answer me. She just cried. And now the whole ugly architecture of it was standing there in plain view. Why nobody had listened to him. Why a 7-year-old had decided the only way anyone would ever believe him was to build a case so complete, so backed up in 3 places, so impossible to explain away, that not one adult in this family would be able to look away from it. They had made him a liar in everyone's eyes first, so that when he told the truth, it would sound like just another one of his stories. He had known that. He had planned around it. He had planned around it. He was 7. Grant had gone quiet, too. And then he said, very small, the pin. And Sloane looked up. My mother's Cameo pin, she said. It's been gone since spring. Grant wouldn't look at her. I found the pawn ticket in the older one's coat 2 weeks ago, he said. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I would ask about it, and I never did. So there it was. He had known at least a piece of it for 2 weeks, and he had folded the ticket back into the coat and said nothing, because knowing would have meant doing something, and doing something would have meant admitting what his daughters were. I didn't trust myself to speak. The knuckles of my good hand were white around the edge of the coffee table. The younger girl chose that moment to make her move. She had been inching toward the hallway, and all at once she broke for the stairs, yelling that she had to get her phone. She had to delete something before the police saw it. And I stepped off the coffee table and got to the bottom of the staircase before she did and planted myself across it with my whole body. She hit me and bounced back and sat down hard on the floor. "Get out of my way," she screamed. "You are not going up there," I said. "Not to Callum, not to your phone, not to anything. Whatever's on that phone is exactly what the police are going to want to see. And if you delete evidence in a felony, you are going to make today so much worse for yourself. Though I'm starting to think that might not be possible." Her sister tried to come at the stairs from the other side, and I widened my stance and filled the whole bottom step. I outweighed the both of them put together, and there was nothing they could do about it. You could see the exact second they both understood. "The evidence is already backed up," I said loud to the whole room. "It has been backed up for a week. The police are already on their way. There's nothing on any phone in this house that can save you now. So sit down." And because I said it in the voice you use when you are absolutely certain, and because for once in their lives a consequence was standing directly in front of them that would not be talked out of, they both sat. From upstairs, faint through the bathroom door, I heard Callum's small voice call down. "The video was saved in 3 places, Auntie. I already checked. Don't worry." And I swear I almost laughed, because here I was holding a staircase against 2 teenagers, and the 7-year-old was the one reassuring me. This kid staged a full evidence preservation protocol out of a bathroom while babysitting a man with dementia. And there are grown adults with law degrees who fumble a group chat. Callum is going to run something someday. Grin had his daughter's phones now, both of them, and I told him to leave them exactly as they were, and not to open a single thing. And to his credit, he set them on the table, screen down, and stepped back. Because I think somewhere in the last 5 minutes, the last piece of his denial had finally died. Sloane was scrolling through the older girl's phone before I could stop her, and she made a sound I hope I never hear again. "They were texting about it," she whispered, staring at the screen. "To their friends. They were bragging." She read a piece of it before her voice gave out. They had joked in writing, with little laughing faces, about how easy it was, about how the old man wouldn't know the difference, about how they had blamed the kid and everyone bought it. There was a whole thread. There were photographs of the cash fanned out. There was a running joke between them, a nickname they had for my grandfather that I will not repeat, that made the younger aunts by the door actually gasp. "There's a list," Sloane said, scrolling, crying openly now. "They made a list of what they were going to buy next. There's more in here. There's so much more." I didn't need to see it. I had seen enough. Then somebody knocked on the front door. Everyone in that room froze all over again, because the last thing this morning needed was one more person walking into it, and I went to the window and looked out. Standing on the porch was a stranger in a puffy jacket, holding his phone up to check an address with an empty duffel bag over his shoulder. I opened the door a crack and he said, cheerful as anything, that he was here for the free gaming laptop from the listing. That he had driven 40 minutes, that the post said, first come, first served. Behind me, I heard the older girl make a strangled sound. I told the man, as politely as a person can while bleeding through a bandage, that the item was already gone. He frowned and said the listing had been up an hour ago, and I said I was very sorry, but there had been a family situation. And he looked past me at the wreckage, and the crying, and the blood, and decided he didn't want any part of whatever this was, and he left. He was not the last. Over the next 20 minutes, 2 more strangers pulled into the driveway looking for a phone and a smartwatch that a 7-year-old had promised them for free at 3:30 in the morning. And each time one of them turned up, the reality of it landed on those girls a little harder. Because you cannot argue your way out of a thing that is already sitting in a stranger's duffel bag on the other side of town. The stuff was not hidden. It was not in a closet, waiting to be recovered once the fuss died down. It was gone. Distributed to the winds, exactly the way the $2,000 was gone, and Callum had made sure of that on purpose, so that no amount of adult negotiating could quietly put everything back and pretend the morning had not happened. He had made it irreversible before any of us were even awake. Grant watched the third stranger drive off, and something in him gave up a different way than before. He came over to me, quieter now, and he lowered his voice like we were negotiating a deal. He said maybe there was a way to make everyone whole, that he could replace the girl's things and cover Grandpa's money and even put something aside for Callum, a real amount for the boy's future. If we could all just agree that this had gotten blown out of proportion and keep it in the family. He actually said the boy's future, as if the way to help a child who had just been robbed of his safety for a year was to hand him cash to forget it. Callum, who was still on the stairs then, before I sent him up, heard the whole thing, and he looked at Grant, and he said in that flat little voice that he didn't want their money. That he had never wanted their money, that if he had wanted money, he would have kept the laptop instead of giving it away. Then he said the thing that ended that conversation for good. He said, "They didn't steal from me. They stole from Grandpa, and from 6 families who don't have any laptops to give away. So you can't pay me to be okay with it. It was never mine to forgive." The girls tried from their chairs to work on him one last time, hissing at him low so the adults might not catch it, telling him he was going to regret this, telling him he was going to be sorry once the police left and it was just family again, telling him nobody was going to want him after today. And I stepped between them and him one more time, and I crouched down and I said loud enough for the whole room, "Don't waste your breath, because he is not going to be here after the police leave, and neither are you." Callum didn't even look afraid. He looked at his cousins, and he said, "You kept telling me nobody would believe me, and you were almost right. But almost is not the same as all the way, and I only needed one person to finally look." That was when Sloane, still scrolling with shaking hands, made another sound and turned the phone toward me. And there was more. There's always more with people like this. A photograph of a checkbook, and a caption about how easy Grandpa's signature was to copy, and a message about a bottle of his memory pills, and what somebody at school would pay for them. Vulnerable adult exploitation, forged instrument sale of a controlled substance, and it was all sitting there in a group chat with laughing faces next to it, written by children who had been told their whole lives that consequences were things that happened to other people. Outside, faint and then not faint, the first siren started to climb up out of the distance, and it was the most welcome sound I had heard in years. The family that had been crowded in the doorway, watching all of this like it was television, started to move, and it was such a telling thing to watch. Some of them fixing their collars and smoothing their shirts, some of them quietly slipping their own phones into pockets. Everybody suddenly very interested in looking like reasonable people who had been reasonable this whole time, as if there had not been a full 60 seconds where a child pulled a knife and every adult in the room stood still as furniture. The siren got louder, and then it was right outside, red and blue light sliding across the ceiling and the framed photos. And I heard car doors. And then the front door opened hard enough to knock the wreath off its nail. 2 officers came through it, their hands resting on their belts, taking in the whole scene. In one slow sweep, the broken plastic all over the floor, the knife nowhere in sight, and me standing at the bottom of the stairs with blood running off my fingertips and dripping onto the hardwood. "I am the one who called," I said, and I raised my good hand up where they could see it while I kept pressure on my arm with the other. "The knife is under the entertainment center. I kicked it there. It's a carving knife." The girl who used it is the older one in the chair. There is a 7-year-old and an elderly man locked in the upstairs bathroom for their safety, and I will bring them down when you tell me it is clear. The lead officer was a woman, maybe 50, with a kind of calm that only comes from having walked into 1,000 rooms exactly this bad, and her nameplate said Reyes. She took one look at the blood on me, one look at the two teenagers, and one look at the faces of the adults trying so hard to look normal, and I watched her read the entire room in about 4 seconds flat. Tell me what happened fast, and then we will slow it down. Reyes said, coming toward me, while her partner, a younger officer with a notepad already out, moved to stand between the two girls and the rest of the room. So, I told her fast. I told her about waking up to the noise, about finding Callum in the wreckage, about the girl shoving him down and the cut on his eyebrow, about the missing valuables and the story that came out of him piece by piece. The year of bullying, the burned photograph of his dead parents, the stolen bank card, the pin in the notebook, the $2,000 taken over 4 nights from a man with dementia, the letter, the food drive, the 6 families. I told her he had it all on video. I told her that when the girls realized the evidence existed, the older one went to the kitchen and came back with a knife and moved toward the child, and that I put myself in between and disarmed her and taken the cut on my arm doing it. Reyes' jaw got tighter with every sentence. Her partner had stopped writing and was just looking at the older girl. When I got to the part about the year of blaming Callum for the thefts, about the pawn ticket Grant had found and hidden, about the texts, Reyes turned her head slightly toward her partner, and something passed between them that did not need words. "Where's the child now?" she asked me. "Upstairs, locked in the bathroom with my grandfather like I told him to be." "Good," she said. "That was the right call. We will bring them down in a minute once this room is secure." She looked at the older girl in the chair. "Stand up, please. Turn around." The girl started to protest, started to say it was not fair, started to say the little liar had provoked her. And Reyes did not raise her voice at all. She just said, "You brought a knife into a room with a 7-year-old? We are past fair. Hands behind your back." The younger officer stepped in, and I heard the ratchet of the cuffs closing. That small mechanical sound, and something about it made the whole thing finally real for everyone in that room. Because a 15-year-old in handcuffs does not look like a misunderstood kid who made a mistake. She looks like exactly what she is. Grant came off the couch. "Is that necessary?" He said, his voice climbing. "She's 15 years old. Is that really necessary in front of everyone?" Reyes looked at him without any particular emotion. "Standard when a weapon is involved, sir. Please step back and stay back until we have taken everyone's statement." She turned to the younger girl. "You sit on the front step where my partner can see you. Do not touch your phone. Do not touch anyone else's phone." The younger one went crying, and honestly, the crying didn't move me even a little at that point. And I don't think it moved Officer Reyes either. Grant kept going, kept arguing, kept saying words like overreaction and family matter and their futures, and Reyes let him run down like a wind-up toy, and then said evenly, "Sir, right now, I am looking at aggravated assault with a deadly weapon on a child and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. And if what this person is telling me holds up on that phone a pattern of it..." Her voice was chillingly calm. "Those are not family matters. Those are felonies. You are welcome to give your statement, and you are welcome to call a lawyer, but you are not welcome to keep talking over me." That shut him up. The paramedic crew came through the door behind the officers, 2 of them. The first one came straight to me and started unwrapping the towel I had wound around my forearm. He looked at the cut and said it was long but shallow, that it needed cleaning and closure, but no artery was hit, and he cleaned it right there with something that burned like a struck match while the other one laid out gauze. I barely felt it. I was watching Officer Reyes, who had picked up Callum's phone off the coffee table with a gloved hand after I told her the passcode that Callum had given me weeks ago for exactly this reason, and who was now watching the video. I watched her face while she watched it. I watched her see the 2 girls at the ATM in the dark. I watched her see the money going into the hoodie. I watched her watch a 6-year-old's terrified breathing shake the camera. And I watched her look up from that screen at the handcuffed 15-year-old with an expression that had gone somewhere well past professional. "How old was he when he filmed this?" She asked me quietly. 6, I said. "He turned 7 in September." She looked back down at the phone for a second, and then she handed it to her partner and said, "Log this, all of it, and get the pawn ticket the father mentioned." Her partner had already started going through the older girl's phone with gloved hands, the one my sister had unlocked, and I watched his face do the same slow fall that everyone's face had been doing all morning, as the size of it kept getting bigger. He read a few pieces of it out loud, flat, for the record and the camera, and every line was worse than the one before. He read the messages where they laughed about the ATM. He read the part where they called the coffee can free money. He read the message about copying Grandpa's signature onto a check, and the one about selling his memory medication to somebody at the high school for cash. He read the running joke where they had a nickname for the boy they had spent a year framing. A nickname that was just the word orphan, with something cruel stuck to the front of it. And when he got to that one, he stopped reading. And he looked over at Callum on the stairs, and he did not finish it. Officer Reyes closed her eyes for a second, the way you do when you have been doing a job a long time and you thought you had heard the whole catalog of what people do to each other. In a house on Thanksgiving morning has just added a new page. That is enough for now, she said. It is all logged. It is not going anywhere. Grant had heard every word, and he had put his face in his hands. Because forging a check and selling an old man's prescription are not the kinds of things you get to call a family matter. They are the kinds of things that have their own separate case numbers. And I think that was the moment he finally understood that there was no arrangement to be made here, no amount of cash that made this quiet, no version of the afternoon where his daughters walked it back. Then she said to me, "Bring the boy and the grandfather down whenever they are ready. Slowly, no rush. Let them come at their own pace." I went to the bottom of the stairs, and I called up, gentle as I could, "Callum, it is Auntie. There are police officers here now, and it is safe. You can open the door. Bring Grandpa." I heard the lock turn upstairs and then two sets of footsteps coming down, one small and quick, and one slow and shuffling, and Callum appeared at the top of the stairs, holding my grandfather's hand and bringing him down one careful step at a time, the way you would move something precious that might break. And when they came into the light of the living room and Officer Reyes got her first clear look at Callum, at the cut over his eyebrow that had crusted dark, at the bruise coming up purple along his cheekbone, at the scrapes on his forearm, at the blood on his shirt that was partly his and partly mine, I watched her whole face change. She crouched down low, so she was smaller than he was, so she was looking up at him instead of down. And she said, "Hi, my name is Officer Reyes. You are not in any trouble. I promise you that. Is it all right if the medic looks at your eyebrow while you and I talk? You do not have to do anything you do not want to." Callum nodded, and he sat down on the bottom step with Grandpa beside him, still holding the old man's hand. And while the second paramedic gently cleaned the cut over his eye, Callum told Officer Reyes the entire thing, start to finish, in that same steady little voice. And it was somehow worse hearing it the second time because now there was a police officer writing it all down and it was becoming real. It was becoming a record. It was becoming a thing that had officially happened and could no longer be smoothed over at a dinner table. He told her about the model rocket and the boy named Wells. He told her about the telescope and the art set and the science project. He told her about the night his tooth hurt and he heard footsteps and got up and saw them take the card. He told her about following them, about the ice machine, about being scared about pressing record because his auntie had taught him that if a bully ever does something to you where nobody can see, you find a way to make it so somebody can. He told her about checking the coffee can and finding it empty, and then he did the thing that finished it. He reached into his other pocket, the one that did not have the phone in it, and he pulled out a second folded paper, worn soft from being carried, and he held it out to Officer Reyes. "This was folded under the can," he said. "It is a list of the families. Grandpa wanted them to have Thanksgiving. I didn't know what else to do with it, so I've been keeping it safe." Reyes unfolded it and read it. 6 names in my grandfather's shaking hand, and next to each name, a little note, how many kids, what they might need. One that just said, "He was in my unit," and I watched a police officer, who has surely seen everything, have to stop and clear her throat before she could speak again. Grandpa had been quiet through all of this, adrift, patting Callum's hand, but at the sight of that list something surfaced in him. Some current of the man he still was underneath, and he leaned forward and looked at the paper, and his face crumpled with a confusion so deep it was its own kind of grief. "That is my list," he said. "I have to shop for them today. The store closes early on the holiday. Where is my can? I put the money in the can so I would not forget someone. Where is my can?" And nobody could answer him. My sister, who had been sitting frozen with her hand over her mouth this whole time, made a broken sound and slid off the couch onto her knees on the floor. "Dad," she said. "Dad, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And Grandpa looked at her the way he looks at all of us now, kindly and from very far away. And he said, "Do not cry, sweetheart. It is only money. We will figure it out. We always figure it out," which was the single most devastating thing anyone said in that entire house that morning, because he was comforting the daughter whose children had robbed him, and he didn't even know it. And he never would. Officer Reyes stood up slowly and nodded to her partner, and the two of them went to the entertainment center and moved it out from the wall. And there was the carving knife where I had kicked it, and the partner photographed it in place before he picked it up with a gloved hand and sealed it into a clear bag and wrote across the front of it with a marker, while his body camera light glowed red in the corner. Reyes came back and told me they were going to take the older girl in now, and that the younger one would be released to a relative pending the investigation. Though from the look on her face when she said the word relative, she was not thrilled about the options in this particular house. They walked the older girl toward the door, and this is the part I keep replaying because right up to the very last second, she could not stop herself. As they passed me, she twisted her head around toward Officer Reyes and said, "You know he attacked us first, right? That little freak came at us with a hammer. He's not right in the head. His parents are dead, and he's messed up. Everybody knows it. Ask anyone." And Officer Reyes stopped walking. She stopped, and she looked at that girl for a long moment, and then she said very quietly, "Sweetheart, I have already watched the video you took a knife over. I have already seen the cut on his face and the bruise on his cheek, and I have already seen where you put your own aunt when she stepped in front of him. And I've got a phone and an evidence bag with a group chat where you and your sister laughed about robbing a man who does not know what year it is, so you can stop. There is no version of this where I believe you, and by tonight there is going to be no version of this where anybody does." And she walked her out the door. The girl did not have anything to say to that. There was nothing left to say. Through the front window, I could see them put her in the back of the patrol car, and I watched her face as the door closed, and it was not defiant anymore. It had finally caught up to where she actually was, which was scared, which was a child who had done unforgivable things and was only now understanding that unforgivable things have doors that close behind you. Grant came at me the second the officer was outside. He grabbed my forearm, the cut one, hard enough that I felt it, and he got right up in my face. All the pleading was gone now, replaced by something uglier. "Make him delete it," he said. "You're his favorite. He listens to you. Make him delete the video, and I will pay every cent back today. Cash, right now, we make this go away, and it never happened. Or I swear to God, I will tell everyone you assaulted my daughter. I will tell your work you are unstable. I will make sure that boy is taken out of this family and put into the system where he belongs." "Is that what you want for him?" I looked down at his hand on my arm until he let go. "Two things," I said. "First, touch your hand on me again, and I will let the officer outside know you laid hands on the person who called this in. Second, you just threatened to have a 7-year-old orphan thrown into foster care to protect the daughters who robbed your father-in-law and pulled a knife on that child. And you said it out loud in a room with a phone recording on the coffee table and a body camera 10 feet away. So, please keep going. Say more." He looked at the phone on the table, its little screen still lit, and every ounce of blood left his face for the second time that morning. And then from the floor, my sister spoke, and she did not speak to me, and she did not speak to Grant. She stood up, and she walked past both of us, and she went to Officer Reyes' partner, and she held out the older girl's phone in her open palm, and she said in a voice scraped down to nothing, "The passcode is our anniversary, 419. There is a group chat named after a card game. Read all of it. There is a photo album labeled with a $sign. There are searches in the browser I do not want to say out loud. I should have looked a year ago. I am looking now. Take it. Take all of it." Grant said her name like a warning, and she turned on him with a fury I had never once seen in my careful peacekeeping sister in 40 years of knowing her. "Don't," she said. "Don't you dare." I chose him over that baby for a year. I let them make him the liar. I looked at a child who lost his mother and his father, and I decided he was the problem because it was easier than looking at what I raised. I am done choosing wrong. I am done. She turned back to the officer and she was crying, but her voice held. "Whatever the charges are, I am not going to interfere with them." And I want it on the record that I said that. Officer Reyes came back inside then and took it all in. My sister on her feet holding out a phone. Grant backed against the wall. And she did not ask what she had missed. She just took the phone into evidence and had my sister say the passcode again on camera. Then she came over to me and looked at my arm, at the gauze the medic had taped down over the cut. "I need your statement about the assault on you as well," she said. "That is its own charge. She put a blade into you." "I know," I said. "I want to give it, and I want to press charges for what she did to Callum. And I want whatever order you can give me that keeps both of those girls away from him. Starting right now. Today, not next week." Reyes nodded like she had expected exactly that. "We can start that process at the station. Given the weapon and the age of the victim, a judge is going to move fast on an emergency order. But I have to ask you something, and I need you to think about the answer because it matters for what happens in the next hour." She glanced at Callum on the step, then back at me. "Who does this boy go home with tonight?" And the whole room got quiet again, a different kind of quiet. And I realized every adult in it was waiting to see what I would say. And I realized I did not have to think about the answer at all. I had known it from the second I came down those stairs and found him standing in their wreckage, refusing to be afraid. "He goes home with me," I said. "Tonight and every night after. I've been overseas chasing a paycheck while this family let him drown. And that ends this morning. I do not care what I have to sign or who I have to fight. He is mine now. He has been mine this whole time. I was just too far away to see it." And Callum looked up at me from the step. And for the first time all morning, that brave, stony little face finally cracked, and he was just a 7-year-old again. A little boy who had been carrying the whole world by himself since before he could spell it. And he got up and he crossed the room and he put his arms around my waist and pressed his face into my side. And he didn't say anything. He just held on, and I felt him shaking, all the fear he had refused to show for hours coming out of him at once, now that there was finally somebody solid to lean against. My sister watched us, and she did not fight it. She did not say she was his aunt too. She did not say the family should decide together. She just closed her eyes and nodded once and said so quietly I almost missed it, "Thank you. Take him. Give him what I did not." Officer Reyes let that sit for a second, and then she crouched back down to Callum's level and she said, "Can I tell you something? And I want you to really hear it. What you did today, taping that video when you were 6 and scared, keeping that letter safe, keeping the list of your grandfather's family safe, backing everything up so nobody could make it disappear. There are trained adults who cannot do what you did. You were not being dramatic. You were the only person in this whole house who was telling the truth, and you told it the only way anyone would finally have to listen. Do you understand me? You are not in trouble. You are the reason this got stopped." And Callum, still holding on to me, turned his head just enough to look at her, and he said, "Nobody believed me for a whole year." And Officer Reyes said, "I believe you. Everyone in this room believes you now, and it is written down so nobody gets to forget it." Grandpa had wandered over during all of this, drawn by the huddle of us, and he put his hand on Callum's head, gentle, and he said, "This is a good boy. Whatever he did, he is a good boy. I know that much. I always know that much." And Callum reached up without letting go of me and held on to Grandpa's hand too. So the three of us were all connected there in the middle of that broken room. And I thought, this is the only real thing in this house. Everything else is just wreckage on the floor. Officer Reyes finished up what she needed on scene, took the last of my statement, gave me a card and a case number, and told me someone would call about the emergency order before the day was out. And then she and her partner took the older girl to the station and arranged for the younger one to go with a great aunt 3 towns over. Not with Grant. Not with Sloan. And nobody in that room argued about it, which told you how far the morning had moved everyone. The relatives who had spent the whole thing frozen in the doorway started to drift out, mumbling about needing to get home, needing to check on their own dinners. And I let them go because there was nothing I wanted from any of them. And then the house was quiet. Really quiet. The parade still murmuring on the television to no one. Broken plastic all over the floor, blood drying on the hardwood. My sister sitting on the couch, staring at her own hands. Grant gone somewhere to make phone calls he should have made a year ago. And Grandpa standing in the middle of all of it, patting his cardigan pockets, looking for a coffee can that was not there. "I have to go to the store," he said to no one, to everyone. "The families. It gets late, the store closes early on the holiday." And I looked at Callum, and Callum looked at me. And neither one of us had to say a single word because we had both landed on the exact same thing at the exact same second. I got down in front of my grandfather and I took both his hands in mine and I said, "Grandpa, We are going to do the food drive right now, you and me and Callum. We are going to buy Thanksgiving for all 6 families on your list today before the store closes. The money is handled. You do not have to worry about the can. It is taken care of." And the fog in his face lifted just for a moment. Just enough. And he said, "All 6, you promise? The little one, the family with the baby, they are counting on it." "All 6, I said. "I promise." I did not have $2,000 sitting in an account any more than my grandfather did, but I had a card, and I had a limit, and I had a nephew looking at me like I was the first adult in his entire life who had ever actually done the thing they said they would do. And there was no version of that afternoon where I was going to let one of those 6 families sit down to nothing because 2 thieves had gotten there first. My sister looked up from the couch. "Let me help pay," she said. "Please let me do that much." I thought about it and then I said, "You can put in, but Callum decides where it goes. And Callum hands it over to every house because he is the one who saved it. That's the deal." And Callum nodded, solemn as a judge. So on Thanksgiving morning, with a butterfly bandage over his eyebrow and a bruise going yellow-green on his cheek, my 7-year-old nephew and I pushed 2 shopping carts up and down the aisles of the only grocery store still open, working off a list in a dying man's handwriting. And Grandpa rode along in the front of one cart the way he must have wanted to be doing all along, calling out things his wife used to buy: a turkey for the big family, and 2 smaller birds for the ones on their own, the good rolls, the pie the little kids like, cranberry from the can, because that is how the children want it, and never mind what anyone says. Callum took it deadly seriously. He read each name off the list and made sure we got exactly what Grandpa's note beside it said. And when we got to the 5th name, Callum went very still and he showed me the paper. And the last name was one I recognized, because it was the same last name as the boy from his class, the one with the model rocket, the one Callum had told the whole room about that morning. Wells, the boy whose grandfather had spent 6 months of Saturdays building something the girls smashed in a parking lot for fun. His family was one of the 6. His family was on my grandfather's list. Callum looked up at me and he said, "They wrecked his rocket, now I get to bring him Thanksgiving. That is better than the rocket. That is way better than the rocket." We spent everything I was comfortable spending, and then a little more that I was not. And we loaded 2 carts, and then the whole back of my car until it sat low on its springs. And we drove that list one house at a time. Callum would not let me carry the bags to the doors. He carried them himself, staggering under grocery sacks that came up past his chest, refusing every offer of help, because he had decided that this was his to do, and he was going to do it. At the first house, a tired woman with a baby on her hip opened the door and looked at the bags and looked at the little bruised boy holding them and did not understand. And Callum said, "My grandpa saves all year to give you Thanksgiving. He could not come himself because his memory is sick. But he did not forget you. He would never forget you." And the woman put her free hand over her mouth and could not speak. And Grandpa, watching from the car window, waved at her like an old friend. And she waved back through her tears, and she had no idea who he was. And it did not matter, because he was the man who remembered her family every single year, even now, even as everything else slipped away from him. We did that 6 times, 6 doors, 6 families who had been about to have nothing, and at the Wells house, the boy from Callum's class answered the door himself. And when he saw who it was, standing there behind a wall of grocery bags, his whole face braced. Because the last time these 2 boys had been near each other, Callum was the kid nobody believed, and Wells was the kid who got his rocket stomped, and neither of them had ever had a single good day at that school. And Callum held out the bags and said, "It is Thanksgiving dinner for your whole family. My grandpa put your name on his list." And this other little boy, who had also learned young that the world does not hand you much, looked at the bags and then at Callum and said, "Why are you being nice to me? Everybody at school says you are weird." And Callum said, "Everybody at school is wrong about both of us." And he set the bags down inside the door, and the 2 of them stood there a second, in that way kids do when something important is happening that they do not have the words for. And then Wells said, "Quiet. Do you want to come to my birthday? It is not going to be a big one, but you could come." And Callum said he would think about it, which from a 7-year-old who trusts almost no one is the same as saying yes. And we drove home in the dark with an empty car and a grandfather asleep and smiling in the front seat, and a little boy in the back who had in a single morning exposed 2 thieves, survived a knife, saved a Thanksgiving, found a home, and made his first real friend, and who fell asleep himself before we hit the highway. Finally, finally out of things he had to be brave about. So that is the story of how my 7-year-old nephew ruined Thanksgiving. He smashed a gaming console with a hammer at 6 in the morning. He gave away a laptop and a phone and a purse to strangers off the internet. He got a family arrested at the dinner table with a video he filmed himself when he was 6 years old. He turned a holiday into a crime scene and a broken living room and blood on the hardwood and handcuffs in the driveway. And if you only saw the wreckage, you would think a monster had come through that house. But 6 families ate that night who were not going to. A man losing his mind got to keep the one promise he still remembered making. A boy who had been called a liar for a year got to be the reason the truth came out. And I got a son out of it, which I did not deserve and did not earn, and will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of. He absolutely ruined Thanksgiving, and I've never in my life been more proud of anyone than I am of the person he became doing it. This whole experience changed everything for me. I'm still processing it. What would you have done if you were in my shoes that morning? Or have you ever seen someone, especially a child, show this much courage against impossible odds? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.